The Revolt of 1857 is one of the most important episodes of Indian history. It symbolizes the collective struggle of all Indians against foreign rule. What started as a sepoy mutiny at Meerut on the 10th of May 1857 soon became a mass rebellion against the British rule across north and central India. During this uprising, the Indian city of Kanpur was witness to some of the most gruesome events. During the month of May 1857, the fire of the revolt had taken into its grip key Indian cities of Meerut, Delhi, Mathura, Agra and Lucknow. But the sparks had not yet reached Kanpur. Kanpur was under the command of Major General Hugh Wheeler, a seasoned military officer. He was so confident that nothing untoward would happen in Kanpur that he had sent 2 companies of his forces for the relief of Lucknow. However, there were plenty of reasons for the people of Kanpur to have feelings of resentment against the East India Company. Nana Saheb's claim to succeed as Peshwa was rejected by the company as he was not the natural heir of Peshwa Baji Rao II. Moreover, the company denied him his pension and his privileges. Nana Saheb sent his representative Azimullah Khan to London to petition his case to the Queen, but he failed to impress the Queen. Despite that, Nana Saheb had vowed to remain loyal to the British. On the 2nd of June 1857, Lieutenant Cox fired at his Indian Guard in an inebriated state. Though he missed, but he was caught and put in jail for the night. The next morning, he was acquitted by a hastily convened court. That was a big reason for the resentment among the sepoys. Now Wheeler realized that he was sitting on a powder keg. Sensing trouble, General Wheeler ordered all Europeans to take refuge in the newly dug entrenchments. This decision of his has often been the subject of intense debate. Many feel that the defense of the city could have been more effective from the company's magazine located at the Grand Trunk Road. Still, others think that his decision to shift in the newly dug entrenchments was the right one. Though Nana Saheb had initially promised to be loyal to the British, but now he decided to fish in troubled waters in an attempt to restore his Maratha prestige. He sent a letter to General Wheeler on the 5th of June 1857, informing him that he would launch an attack on the 6th of June at 10 a.m. Consequently, the attack was launched. Even though the company's forces lacked in numbers, but they were successfully able to defend the entrenchments. Nana Saheb's troops were too cautious as they believed in a rumor that suggested the trenches were laden with gunpowder. For the first few days, the company's forces did well to defend their trenches. But as the days went by, there was a shortage of food, water and other supplies. The scorching heat and the lack of sanitation resulted in the outbreak of cholera and dysentery. On the 13th of June 1857, the British medical facilities caught fire, killing the wounded and the sick. Now the British camp was in a precarious situation. On the other hand, the rebels kept on joining Nana Saheb's forces in large numbers. Nana Saheb asked General Wheeler to surrender and in return promised the Europeans a safe passage to Allahabad through river Ganges. Wheeler was in a catch-22 situation. If he rejected the offer, the Europeans would die by hunger and disease, but accepting the offer was equally risky. Finally, he opted to surrender in return for a safe passage to Allahabad. On the 27th June, Nana Saheb arranged for carts, palanquins and elephants to take the Europeans to the banks of river Ganges. Around 40 boats were ready at the Sati Chaura Ghat to take the Europeans to Allahabad. Here we are at the Sati Chaura Ghat, notorious for the massacre of Britishers during the Revolt of 1857. As per the surrender deal, the Europeans were allowed to carry small firearms. When the Europeans started to occupy the boats, a gun accidentally fired. Alarmed, the rebels started massacring the hapless Europeans. Most of the men, including Wheeler, were slaughtered in the mayhem. Another officer, General Mowbray Thompson, was able to make good his escape. Most of the women and children were taken as prisoners. Later on, the British camp accused Nana Saheb of betrayal, but the Indian side has always maintained that the massacre was the result of a misunderstanding. With feelings of anger so high against the foreign rule, perhaps Nana Saheb wanted to project himself as the ideal leader to deal with the Europeans. The prisoners were first taken to Nana Saheb's stronghold at the Savada house. Later on, they were shifted to the Bibighar under the watchful eyes of a lady called Husaini Khanum. The news of the advancements of General Havelock and General Neil had worried Nana Saheb, and he wanted to use the hostages of the Bibighar to force their retreat. However, he failed to stop the advancing English forces. Henry Havelock's forces had scored huge victories in the battles of Fatehpur and Aung on his way to the relief of Kanpur and Lucknow. There were reports that the victorious forces were indulging in ruthless acts of violence against the local populations. These reports were a reason for the rebels to become more bloodthirsty than ever. On the 15th of July, orders were given to finish off the inmates of the Bibighar. Though it is still not clear who gave these orders, but what we do know is that all the women and children were massacred and their bodies were dumped in a nearby well. It is widely believed that the Bibighar massacre was a violent reaction to the reports of British atrocities on Indian villages after back-to-back victories in Fatehpur and Aung. But in reality, the main motive of the massacre was to eliminate the eyewitnesses of the Sati Chaura massacre. When the relieving forces arrived in Kanpur and took control of the city, they were horrified to discover the bodies of women and children in the well. The subsequent acts of retribution by the British were even more horrific. General Neil forced the suspects to lick and clean the blood-stained floor of the Bibighar before killing them. Hindu suspects were forced to eat beef, whereas the Muslims were made to consume pork before meeting their deaths. On the days that followed, thousands were either hanged or shot dead with or without any proof of their involvement in the rebellion. Hindu corpses were then buried, whereas the dead of the Muslims were burnt. Today, the place where the Savada house and the Bibighar once stood has been converted into Nana Rao Park. A memorial was built by the Britishers over the well in which bodies of the Bibighar victims were dumped. It was given the name Memorial Well. Let's take you to the Memorial Well. Behind me is the Memorial Well where the bodies of the British victims were dumped by the rebels.